Hi, welcome to part two, Pauline Interviews. This is our astrology interview with Mark Dodich. I'm having trouble with Mark's name, it's really easy though. And we're coming to you from New Renaissance Bookstore, a great place to find all kinds of metaphysical books and tapes. Lectures are done here and workshops. In fact, Mark has done several workshops here. And how can people go and find out about what's happening here at New Renaissance?
I would start with their website, which is newrenbooks.com, N-E-W-R-E-N books.com. And all of the class listings, all the various classes I do are up on their website.
And so it is a great place to learn a lot if you're into metaphysics and just exploring the world.
It's the best bookstore on the West Coast. And
I think it's the largest.
Yeah, and I have been to bookstores all over the country, and it is the best.
It is.
Yeah.
I like it that it's here on Northwest 23rd. It's in these beautiful little old Victorian homes too.
Yes, yes.
Now for people that didn't see part one, we talked about astrology in general, and you told us that you've been an astrologer. It found you since the 80s.
Yes.
So you have a vast background in astrology, and we talked how it could help people. One part of astrology that I'm really fascinated in, and I've done an interview on this, is called Astrocartography. And astro means star, and mapping is cartography, right?
Yes, yes.
Is it as old as astrology itself, or is it newer?
It is as old as astrology. However, it's much more complicated to cast the charts with the maps. In the old days, you had to do it by hand, and it was a very tedious process. So very few people did it. With the age of computers back in the 1970s, a man by the name of Jim Lewis was kind of the pioneer of it. He hired some software engineers to figure out how to draw the lines on a map. And that really made it user-friendly for all of us to be able to use it.
So I understand. So it became very popular at that time. So maybe people had never heard of it before, but now people...
Well, plus our society has changed. We're a society that moves and travels and does business in different parts of the world. Where back a long time ago, like if you look at my parents, they were born in the city they were born in and they die there.
Yeah,
You
so,
know.
so even if you did their astrocartography chart, they weren't going to move.
Other than, traveling,
Yeah.
you can see it's not just about where you live. You can look at where is the best place for me to do business, or obviously vacation, or if you were going to publish your book, wouldn't you want to publish it on a zone that is supportive of publishing?
So how does this work? And let's say I came to you and I said,
Sure.
Mark, I'm getting a career started, and I want to find the best place in the world
Sure.
for me to do this startup.
Sure. Well, so number one, the one clause, the one disclaimer is compared to regular astrology, this requires accurate time of birth. So if you don't have time of birth within 15 or 20 minutes, it's probably not worth spending the money on. And
But
that's...
Can you do that thing that you said where you
The
do
rectification.
rectification?
You can. You need to be careful because obviously you're spending money on something that is,
Yeah.
see if a chart is off half an hour, it can throw these power lines that we draw on the map off 200-300 miles, which is not good. So that is the one problem with
You have to have
astrocartography.
exact, okay.
Or within 15 minutes.
Okay.
But basically we would just go cast a chart and then we draw the map based upon known action zones.
Can you explain what you mean by no
Sure.
action zones?
So imagine, I'll use a personal example. I have a Get Famous line going down the east coast of the USA, what I call the I-95 line, the highway there.
And what are you doing here on the West Coast?
Well, that's the issue, is you don't always want to live where you've got lines. And I grew up back there and I've lived there. And the issue for me is I've got a great career line there, but I don't really like living on the East Coast. I'm more of just a West
Quality of
Coast
life for
personality.
you.
So what I do instead is I market through various magazines and articles that I write on the East Coast, and I have a very strong presence on the East Coast of the USA. So even though I don't live there, I still take advantage of a power zone.
So that's a good way of showing that you can do something
Yeah.
about it without actually moving there.
Yeah, but when I actually did live there, I went back when I was an industrial salesperson. I went from the lowest paid salesman to management level. I would walk into a metaphysical bookstore, where at that time I was doing readings on the side, and they wouldn't even know what I did, and they'd want me to do work for them. It was just like I was being recognized under in my case it was Jupiter, which is a teaching or a publishing kind of a line. So yes, if I were to choose to go back and live at the East Coast, or if I want to go do the lecture circuit up and down the East Coast, it's a very powerful zone for me.
So I would come in, and let's say I did have my exact birth time.
Yeah.
You would draw it up, and you could tell me I could go anywhere in the world. It wouldn't be just one place, though.
Right, some zones are better for career, some better for relationships, some might be better for retirement. And that's the issue, is people think, oh, there's gonna be one place that's gonna have everything.
You have to choose, don't you?
You have to choose your
Yeah.
priorities and what is your intent. And at some places in life, when I lived on the East Coast of the USA, I was very much in what we'll call corporate career mode, okay? And now that I'm on the West Coast, obviously I'm doing something very different than my soup life, we'll call it.
Right.
And so at different times of your life, you've got different things going on.
I like what you said about retirement, because that would be nice. I mean, a lot of people are retiring, and then they want to figure out, where should I spend my retirement? But the problem is, it's usually a couple, or not, hopefully it is, and they're not going to have the same chart, are they?
Well, and that is an issue, and each person would need to have their own chart, and then we have a technique called composite, where we take the two people and make a third chart. So in a relationship, you have three people. So we'd have you, we'd have me, and then we'd have the composite of the two of us. And you're right, sometimes it works for both people and others not. Now, not all couples want the same thing in the same place, so sometimes that works. And sometimes you have to choose, just as one example that I had recently is husband, wife, children. Well, they didn't really match up. So what they chose to do is go where the husband's career lines were best, because she was being a housewife and a mother, and they felt that the husband's need to earn an income to support the family was the first priority. So he got the turn.
That makes a lot of sense. And so this family did come to you, and they, excuse me, it's like a leap of faith, really, isn't it? Well, if you unless you really believe in it, because I'm going to have to tell another story, but I had two friends that came to my Parapsychology Today TV show, and we had an astrocartographer do their chart, and they lived in Portland, and she sent them to Australia, and they went just to check it out, and their health improved, they had a good relationship to begin with, but it even improved more. And then it took them 10 years, but they eventually sold their house. They're actually in, excuse me, in New Zealand.
Right.
And they're extremely happy. They really are. So to me, that's a leap of faith to go from Portland to New Zealand.
And I will tell you, the astrocartography works. There's a lot of research, a lot of studies that have been done. It works.
How expensive is it to get a chart done like that?
Well, there's a variety of ranges. You can go what we'll call the budget end. There's a company called Astronumeric Services that you can send them $40, and they will send you a map and a booklet, and then you have to read it yourself. And it's actually the first map I ever owned, which we'll call it gives you the thumbnail view, and so very expensive. Whereas I do a full, all the bells and whistles, what we'll call the Cadillac reading, which is an hour-and-a-half reading, is $210.
That's not bad. That's not bad at all to find out where you should go.
Well, it's good for life, so you can spread that money out over a lifetime.
I need to find out the exact time I was born. Maybe I can get from Britain, I get the records or something.
Sure.
I mean, there must be a record somewhere.
There's generally a county records that hold it. Like in the US, one of the places you run problems with is, for example, military children births. You're born on a base. And the data is there, but it's stuck on some old microfiche in some warehouse in the back of, the back 40.
But usually on American birth certificates, there's a birth time.
Or on the long form that's behind the birth certificate.
Well, that's something for me to check into later. But I don't know, at this point, I'm not sure, where I go. Maybe I'd say retirement, maybe, I don't know. I'm not ready to retire, but...
But even if you were going to write your book and go out on the lecture circuit, wouldn't you want to spend your time on a place where you're going to get more bang for the buck?
Is it going to just be one place, though? Or I remember when my husband got transferred to California, and my friend who did the chart, she said that because I like to perform. She said, that's a great place for you to do performing and
Sure.
television and stuff.
Sure.
So it actually worked out pretty nicely as a hobby.
Yeah.
But I love California, it's a beautiful
Yeah.
state, but I missed Oregon a lot.
Well-
Like you, I grew up on the east, but I'm a West Coaster.
Yeah.
There are places in the world I just feel at home.
Yeah.
Is that because of my lines and things? They're like
I
Europe.
think there's more to it than that.
Okay.
I think the lines is one factor, but there's
Uh-huh.
also, for example, if you go to my website, theastromark.us, there's a free PDF download which will give you the zodiac sign of various states and
Uh-huh.
cities. So you could find the sun and the moon of a city.
Uh-huh.
So if you're a Pisces, you could go to, I think Florida has a lot of Pisces in it.
Mhm.
And so that's one other factor is the state, made
Yeah.
a state during the sign Pisces, you might feel more comfortable in a Pisces state.
Well, the funny thing is, even though I'm a Pisces and it's a water sign, I like the water, but I'm more at home in the mountains.
Sure. Well, you'll see a lot of people with strong earth element, or Capricorn rules mountains, so,
Mhm.
you might see
Well,
the Capricorn.
Yeah, my husband likes that.
Sure.
Yeah, he's a Capricorn.
Sure.
So we're talking about lines. When you talk energy lines, are energy lines that run through the universe or through the world? Or you said my power lines, my energy lines.
Well, so basically what we do is we take your chart,
Mhm.
we find what we would call the action zones.
Mhm.
There's career action zones, there's relationship zones,
Mhm.
home and family kind of lines.
Uh-huh.
And then we just draw them on the map, and basically the energy is strong about 300 miles on either side of the line.
Oh, so you've got a little
So you have a
variation.
range,
Yeah.
and then we also have minor lines that we call parans, which is just short for a Greek word that means
Uh-huh.
parallel. And those are good 100 miles north or south, so you might have the same major lines in Seattle versus Portland, Oregon,
Mhm, mhm.
but the minor energies are gonna be different.
Mhm. Interesting. See, somebody is really sick, they're struggling with some kind of terrible disease. Would it benefit them to see where their power lines are, to go someplace where their health might improve? Or where they could
Absolutely.
heal better?
Yeah, do that all the
Mhm,
time.
mhm. Now, we were talking about physical characteristics, and I thought that was interesting. You could tell from, not all the time, you said you can't, but there are some astrologers who can say, oh, I walk in and they say, oh, you just look like a Pisces, or
Sure,
feature-wise, not only temperament-wise, but feature-wise.
yeah. There's an astrologer here at the store, Judith Hill, who has a book on body types.
Uh-huh.
And goes through it and it says certain body types have certain signs
Uh-huh.
or certain traits with it. Normally it's not your sun sign though. Normally it's what's called the ascendant or the rising sign, which is how you project yourself
Uh-huh.
to the world, is oftentimes what people see. So for example, sometimes it'll be the way people dress. You'll see
Mhm.
someone who's a fire sign, like an Aries or a
Yeah.
Leo or a Sag, they might be wearing bright colors,
Mhm.
reds and oranges.
Yeah, that was my mother-in-law. She was an
Yeah.
Aries, and she was very bright.
Right, whereas if you see somebody who's more like a Libra, they might be
Uh-huh.
wearing pastels,
Mhm.
or a Virgo might be wearing earth tone colors.
You said something funny, if you don't mind
Yeah.
saying about yourself, about your hair,
Oh,
and
yeah.
about your sign.
That little tuft that sticks up is a classic, my rising sign is Virgo, and that's a classic Virgo trait.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
I wanted to ask you, can you see past lives in certain lines? Like, if I had a chart done, can you see where I've lived before in another lifetime?
I've done it backwards from the way you're saying it. Because you have to be careful saying, oh, you lived under this line, that happened. But I'll give you an example. I tend to go with people who've already done past life research, and they come and tell me what their past life was.
Mhm.
So as an example, I had a client who had a past life where she died by sword in Japan. Okay, so we went and we looked at her maps, and in this past life, she had gone as a warrior, male warrior, from China to Japan, where she got killed by a sword back in ancient days. So we went and we looked, and she had Mars and Saturn lines. Well, Mars rules guns and knives and swords, also rules acupuncture needles for more modern day looks at it. And here's Saturn, and I think she also had a Pluto line, which rules death. So here she was with the government, Saturn rules government, crossing the sea, to a sword line where she died.
Might you have an aversion to going to Asia, like Japan and China? Because of that, might you come into this lifetime with an aversion?
Or maybe you need to go back there to heal
Yeah.
that.
Oh,
You
yeah,
can look at it both
yeah, you can look
ways.
at it, right. Everything can be looked at both ways.
Yeah.
I would say, do you have any predictions for this new year coming up? You know, the stock market kind of took a nosedive at the beginning of the year, and the government's still been kind of going to head, but I'm an optimist. I like to
Yeah.
think that things are gonna turn out good.
Well, the wonderful thing that's going on this year is starting in the middle of July of 2014 till middle of 2015, planet Jupiter, optimist, enthusiastic, I call him the Santa Claus of the zodiac, is moving into Leo, and Leo is the sign that rules the heart. So people putting their heart and their passions and their enthusiasm into what they're doing is coming up between summer of 2014 and summer of 2015. But to get there, there's a lot of shifting saying what doesn't belong in my life anymore. So in the first half of 2014, I'm seeing a lot of people having some real challenges because they're either kicking people out of their life or they're getting divorced, or I've seen a lot of deaths already. And it's because when you're done with something, it's time to let it go and move on. And the reason for all of this shifting is we're deciding what's in our value system, what's important for us, so that when we get to the middle of July, we're putting our energy into what our passions call us to do, not just the things we think we have to do to get by in this world.
I think that's a wonderful thing, but what's moving us forward that way? Are the energies of the earth changing? Are we raising our vibration?
Well, of course, that's a whole big philosophical topic.
Yeah.
You know, some people would say, like people who go with the Mayan calendar philosophy as well, we're out of the old calendar and something new has been birthed.
Right, we started a new cycle
Yeah.
over a year ago.
And we might not know what that new cycle is about, or for some people that might be woo-woo, who knows?
Yeah.
But you've got to admit that if you look on the planet, when the planet Uranus moved into Aries, we had the Japan earthquake and the whole Arab Mideast spring, and now it's spread to the Ukraine. And it's about people saying we need to open up to new levels of freedom or new ways of soul expression
Yeah.
is what's going on. And the beauty of the astrology is you could say, oh yeah, I can see that. We can measure the day of the Japan earthquake. Uranus, which rules earthquakes, moved into Aries, you know, which is fire and explosions.
Could you have made a prediction, and could people have been saved if they'd used the chart? I mean,
Well, it would be hard to say, would that happen in Fukushima or would that happen somewhere else? Now, we do use the astrocartography for earthquake zones over like a quarterly basis. Or, you know, a classic example like of Florida, I have a lot of clients in Florida, they'll ask me, Mark, are the hurricanes going to hit the Gulf Coast
Really?
or the Atlantic coast in one year? In the year of Katrina, it was all very heavily emphasized in the Gulf Coast.
so it sounds like meteorologists should dabble a little bit into astrology.
There's a whole branch of astrology called astrometeorology.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Anything else that I don't know about you can tell me that's interesting?
1,000,001 things, my goodness, it's such a big topic.
It is big. We'll have to do some more on this.
Sure.
But sticking with astrocartography, we just have about another couple of minutes because I talk a lot. I liked what you said about new things because this is like new for me. I mean, I've worked in television, but so this makes me feel like I'm headed doing my passion and what I enjoy, and that maybe I'm going to learn all the little intricacies that I'm still learning, and maybe by the summer I'm going to have it down pat, and it's just going to grow for me maybe to, the end of the second half of the year. So that's something to look forward to.
See, that's it. In the first half of 2014, you're doing all the shifting and
Yes,
adjusting.
yes.
So that by the time we get to July and this all opens up,
Yeah.
you're ready to jump on the moving freight train.
That sounds good to me.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Mark. And
Thank
listeners,
you.
so you want to end with anything about astrology, or I think we've covered a lot of stuff.
Well, what I would say is just, if they wanted more information, if they just went to my website, which
Yes.
is astromark.us.
Yes.
There is just a ton of information on there. I update what's going on in the sky at any one point in time. Or obviously my bi-monthly newsletter has
Yeah.
short and quick information. But, you know, there's a ton of free information on my website.
I'm not sure when I'm going to air this, but are you doing any workshops or any talks here at New Renaissance this year?
I am, and I have ongoing things that I'm
Ongoing, so
doing
you
here.
just check your website.
About
to let
every
people know.
quarter, except
Yeah.
in the summer. Sometimes I
Okay.
like to goof off in the summer.
Why not?
But, you know, I have things going on here. Some are astrology, some are more metaphysical, like I do a violet flame transmutation workshop.
I know we're talking astrology, but I wanted to ask you, you're also, do you do tarot?
I do.
You do tarot, you do intuitive readings?
I do. In fact, I started that way.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Well, we have a lot of other topics we're gonna talk about.
Absolutely.
Another time, though.
Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, thank you, Mark, it's been fun, it's always fun to talk to you.
All right.
This time, I think I followed you, because I said, let's keep it Astrology 101.
All right,
Yeah.
right.
So I hope all of you watching Mark and me talk about astrology, I hope you followed us too. We tried to keep it simple, but there's a lot more to it, and hopefully we'll do some more talks on it. Thanks for watching Pauline Interviews.